Today I want to talk about magic items. Magic items are a staple in fantasy ever since Gilgamesh had a magical bow or something, since Siegfried had a magical sword that could cut anything, based in dragon's blood, and the ring of the Valkyries or whatever. But in fantasy, certainly since Bilbo Baggins found a magical ring in a cave. And magical items can be a lot of fun. Magical items are great, but there are a few caveats to that. So much for my lighting. If you're using magical items too frequently, if you introduce new ones like every game, they suddenly are not magical anymore. They become the new normal. They are the mundane. That, for example, happens in Eberron a lot, because all of the technology in Eberron is magical based. And it's very common. You've got magical trains, airship, magical guns. And at that point I feel it's not magic anymore, it's just technology using a weird power source. If everyone in your party already has a +1 ring of protection, and they have to choose if they are using this new ring of constitution instead of the ring of protection or something, if they want to keep their old magical items or use the fancy new ones, you probably have too many magical items. They are not really appreciated for their uniqueness anymore. It's also easy for magical items to completely mess up the game balance if you're not careful. Let's go back to Bilbo and his ring. A ring that can make you invisible anytime you want, as long as you want, as often as you want, is incredibly powerful. Not only for stealth, but also for combat. Ever tried fighting against an invisible man? As if Tolkien himself realized that in The Lord of the Rings, this ring comes with a lot of limitations and is the centerpiece of the entire plot. And at that point, it's okay to have a powerful magical artifact. It's okay to have a sword that does like double damage and crits on 19 and 20 if it is also cursed. And not just some curse you can easily ignore. No. It should be one of the center pieces of your narrative. Something your player has to deal with every time he uses that sword. Maybe something he wishes to be rid of the curse, to be rid of the sword. But while he is carrying it, he might be forced to use it because of the situation. I personally love cursed items. Whenever I find a cursed item in a game, an obviously cursed item, I tend to find a very good reason to take that item with me. Most often that reason tends to be where in a very dire situation we can use every bit of power, of magic we can get, and we can deal with the curse later. Even though as a player I know it's probably not worth it, but I think these complications introduced by a curse spice up the game. And also, as a GM, you as my player, you can be sure if you find a magical item that is just straight up good, that gives you just plus to hit, plus to attack, it's a mighty belt of strength, extra spell slots, whatever, just straight up good, it's probably cursed. Another way to maybe not balance magical items, but somewhat take them out of the power equation altogether, is not giving them any straight up bonuses. No plus to hit, no plus to damage, something else. Something like they can cast an exotic spell a few times a day. Or they have a property that is wholly unique to that item. Like an immovable rod. You can put it anywhere in space, press a button and just stays there. No matter how much force you put on it. These are not straight up powerful items, but they reward creative problem solving, and they may end up being completely broken in the right situation, but the players will have to apply their creativity to get into these situations where these weird magical items are completely broken, and at that point I find they've earned it. Like the Cypher system that is, for example, used in the Numenera RPG, makes one of its core concepts of funky, funny, magical items. The so-called Cyphers in that system are just small magical items that do stuff. That can be anything. And the system around that is a bit lacking in complexity, and the authors know that. But this means there's more focus on these magical items, these ciphers. And there are also a lot of them. Like every character carries around 2 or 3 of these at a time. Some are pretty mundane, like a spray that heals you, gives you a plus to strength for a few minutes. But some have limited, oddly specific, but also powerful effects. Like making the ceiling the floor for 5 minutes, reversing gravity. I once GM'd a game of Numenera and gave out these ciphers at random, like you're supposed to. And my players found an oddly powerful combination. So they got this one cipher that powers down all machines, all electric machines for like a minute or so. And that would have been a great help in many fights. But they also found like an acid that could melt through steel and armor pretty quickly. Both of these would have been powerful on their own, but in combination they completely broke the game. So I had this huge machine of war, this giant battle mech-like centipede with rockets and MGs and everything, as like one of the final bosses, guarding a very important item for the campaign. And I had planned that my players could meet this boss early on, but they would be forced to retreat, get more powerful, get more allies, get more magical items, and then come back later. But they had these 2 items, so they threw that one orb, robot powers down. That would have been not a huge problem on its own, because I'm sure they couldn't have been able to kill it even in its down-powered state. But then comes the acid and they burn a huge hole in it. And after that it was kind of trivial to kill it. And they got to this place way earlier in the campaign than I had expected or planned for. But that's part of the fun, that things happen that you as a GM are not expecting. You're rewarding this creative problem solving of your players. And the players will feel very clever for coming up with these ideas, and it will be great fun for all. Lastly, there are magical items, sometimes powerful magical items, that are straight up MacGuffin devices for your plot. So some items, some power that your PCs will need to advance the plot. the sword of dragon slaying, demon slaying, whatever. The magical wand of banishing of demi-liches. Something they have to acquire in order to overcome their challenges, in order to advance their plot. Something that makes them go out there and delve into these dangerous dungeons. This item becomes the carrot at the end of the stick for your PCs to actually act. And usually either the campaign ends after that item has been used and it's not that important that it's completely ridiculously broken powerful, or the use was very specific again and it was just useful in overcoming this one big evil. So after that it can be discarded and the campaign can continue as normal. Though that might feel a bit cheap. It's nice to have a memento of that adventure, that campaign, and keep that magical item and still have it be useful. It doesn't have to be the ultima ratio in any situation, but it should still be useful and something you like to keep around. For example, last year I played the D&D Essentials kit and the adventure, and we got a sort of dragon slaying in there, and that was really cool because the boss of that module was White Dragon. And we used the sword to slay the dragon, but after that we haven't encountered any dragons since. The sword is still a longsword +1, pretty useful, and if you ever find a dragon again, it would be an incredibly powerful magical sword once again. But as long as we don't find a dragon, it's just a nice sword. To summarize, magical items, there's 3 good ways to use them. Powerful but cursed, oddly specific but fun, or plot relevant. What do you think? Do you keep magical items very scarce and hardly ever give them to your PCs? And if you do, are they then cursed and plot relevant? Or do you throw them out like candy on Halloween? And what's the most memorable magical item that you ever found? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching and goodbye.